A United Nations Security Council vote to end the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali has been postponed at Mali's own request. It was one of our top stories for this news hour, and that's according to AFP citing diplomatic sources. Let's discuss these developments further with David Otto-Endeley, an international defense and security analyst and director on security for Horn of Africa Institute for Peace and Security. He's joining us via Zoom from Abuja, Nigeria. Hi there, David. Good to see you. Nigeria, we're going to speak about Mali and Somalia, but let's start with what's happening in Mali. What are your thoughts about Mali's insistence that UN peacekeepers should leave the country immediately?
Well, I think the Malian government, the military junta and the interim government, is buying into the sentiment of Malians who had demonstrated that the UN peacekeeping mission should leave. But basically, you know that this mission expires on the 30th of June. So what the Malian government is effectively saying is that if the host population is no longer, happy with this, a decade mission, and there is an end date, which comes on the 30th of June, therefore there shouldn't be any renewal. But also, I think that the Malian government is perhaps relying on the Russian government, to give it some leverage, to provide it with, filling the gap, once the UN security mission leaves. But I think the main reason has been that, there hasn't been peace in Mali since the Security Council deployed the UN mission. And the Malian government does not believe that, there's going to be any better in terms of keeping the very expensive UN mission in Mali. So for them, it's time for change.
When you look at the situation, David, what do you think the likely impact on civilians is going to be on people that are living in Mali?
Now, I think it depends on the kind of backup that the Malian government is preparing to bring in. Of course, if you withdraw a mission that has been on ground for a decade, there will be impact in terms of some stability. But I think the Malian government seems to be much prepared, to cover that gap, to then, be able to protect its citizens. So we have to wait and see when this force withdraws. Remember, it takes about 6 months to a year for a final withdrawal. But I think the government, probably would have a backup plan to ensure that there is still peace and stability and protection for its citizens.
So what we're also reporting today, David, is that Somalia is also in the process of a gradual withdrawal of international peacekeepers. Is Somalia now capable of taking charge of its own security, do you think?
Well, President Hassan Sheikh, has argued that, Somalia is now prepared. He says that they've sent about 9,000 security forces to be trained in countries like Kenya, in Uganda, Ethiopia, Egypt. And he believes that these forces, once they do return, they will be able to do the job. I mean, they've argued that, this, UN missions has been in Somalia for the past 18 years, and there hasn't been an opportunity given to a sovereign state like Somalia to take in charge of its own security forces. So perhaps, let's see if, they say the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Let's see how much performance, the Somalian forces can do while the UN missions and other forces like ATMIS, leave. But we've still got a couple of months, I believe, for that to happen.
Well, talking about the armed forces' performance in Somalia, a frequent request by Somalia to the UN has been the lifting of an arms embargo there. Why has this not been granted, David? And what would it take for Somalia's request to be granted?
Well, the UN has argued, and so has, so many other countries, neighboring states have argued that Somalia has not been able to protect its land and maritime borders. Therefore, there has been a huge number of illicit flow of arms. And this was principally one of the reasons why the UN had, kind of renewed the imposition of arms embargo, because they believe that, most of these arms will fall into the hands of groups like Al-Shabaab. But I think, for some reason, one has to be able to also agree that there is an exemption to this arms embargo. It doesn't affect the military and, police and security agencies. It doesn't affect their training. But what the Somalian government is arguing is that they need much more independence in terms of handling their security and they need much more sophisticated weapons, huge weapons to fight against Al-Shabaab. But again, I think, again, we've seen some of the votes that have come in. I think it's high time, they're given the opportunity. They have been fighting Al-Shabaab recently, and seriously, the president has said, give us a chance and lift the arms embargo so we can continue to pound on Al-Shabaab, and bring some stability in the region. Let's see how that goes. But it's a very challenging time, for President Hassan Sheikh.